Good afternoon. I thought I'm gonna check the old fuel pumps I had in my car, which I replaced in July of 2021, which was last year, it was in May of 2021, so about 14 months ago. And which you have seen in the videos I just posted in the last week or so. They were in there in the video about the starting issue and idle issues. And I had them sitting here since I took them out in my shop throughout the winter, non-climatized. And I wanted to take a look at this. So the first thing is what we noticed, they have no markings on them, except for the plus and minus, basically on here. And so those are no-name pumps which were put in at one point or another. And they have a pretty good weight to them. I have not been able to find any markings whatsoever. The one which had this plastic wrap on here, you can see this in my videos, that is actually the one which has the tank line on it, which comes from the fuel strainer down and has the little return wire fuel hose coming in from the backside of the accumulator. And I hadn't turned those pumps on or run them since I took them out back in May when I replaced it. And these are the check valves I got from Mercedes source. I had put in the end of November 2020 or early December 2020 when I first started working on the car. I cannot remember which one, but one of the two originally, which was on here, which probably came with these pumps, was stuck open. And so I had the system basically drained just from the fuel which was in there when I disassembled that in May of 2021. And I left it that way until today. And I should have made a video earlier because this pump, which connects to the fuel tank, was drawing twice the current at first startup from this one here. And that was really surprising. And the way they work is the fuel tank goes in here, it puts this out and returns it to this pump. And then from that pump, the high pressure goes out to the accumulator and to the tank. And the fuel filter is in there too. So no, the fuel filter actually goes into this line. So this is after the fuel filter. So tank to fuel filter here with the return line, and then from here to the input, output to input, output to fuel distributor, and to the accumulator. That is the sequence of these two pumps. But even with the fuel filter, this pump here, after all these years now and sitting, drew twice as much current at first startup. So this had more gunk in it, or some obstruction, which caused also a noise compared to this one here. And I'm going to show you what they both are drawing now. By the way, on those pumps, the larger, the thicker terminal is the minus, and the smaller one is the plus, so they can be hooked up quite easily. So when we turn this on, you can hear this. And you can see it, we're drawing right 1 amp. And when we hook up the other pump, we're just a little bit below it. The test Bosch recommends is 11.5 volts when you have a lower battery. And you can see another thing is when you just do a simple test, that this actually creates a vacuum. We go to 1.4 amps here. And 1.4 amps here. So they're both about the same at this point. And all I did is I used super clean and hot water, and I put them in the kitchen sink, and I submerged them, and I ran them with the 11 or 14 volts connected here from a different power source. And that cleared out this pump here completely to where it is now. I do not know on how they actually compare to the Bosch pumps. But, and I do not know if they still develop the full pressure. And the reason why is they have an internal check valve. And when you reverse the voltage on these, they should not be pumping fluid or vacuum from this side and the other. But you can see and you can hear, so the internal check valves on these here has started to leak equally, even after cleaning them and running the fluids backwards. So that's how I knew when it started to pump the fluid, when I reversed the polarity. And this should not be the case. They should block. This means these pumps will not develop the full pressure anymore. They were good enough, but it was interesting to see that the pump actually, which connected directly or more or less directly to the tank, clogs up more severely, which can alter the behavior to almost double the current of the pump, which is the secondary pump in there. These pumps also have a filter mesh in here. Of course, now I didn't bring the flashlight. Let me see if we can get enough light in there. It's barely visible. When you look in use, you can actually see it. There you can see it. There is a filter in here and a filter in here. Now the advantage of this thing leaking, you can see it actually, this looks better than this one here. That is not as dark. You can see it better now. Since that check valve didn't work in either one of the two pumps, I was able to back flush this. So that's when a lot of this stuff came out. It was yellowish in color, and I couldn't tell you exactly of what that was, but that was, I would think, is the last fuel I had in when I disassembled these pumps was 91 grade with ethanol, and they sat from May, from that day when I took them out, and I basically just drained them, having them, setting them up, and then I put them in my other shop with no air conditioning, and they sat through last summer, last winter, this winter, you know, winter 21, 22, 22, then the spring of this year, and just now with 100-degree temperature in here. So whatever was in here got caused the pump to run twice as hard. And the other thing is, even the new check valves, one of them had seized up just from sitting in it. That would not open properly and not close properly until I actually attached it to the pump in that bath with that super clean in it. And that freed this check valve, both check valves up where they're actually working properly. That is something which obviously seems to work. Now, I do not know on how they compare to the Bosch pumps, but looking at the markings here, or the way they were assembled, we can see that they were assembled exactly on the same machine, because the machine actually left exactly the same pinch marks in the exact same height. So they were manufactured by the same company on the same machine, assembled. And they had, like I said, they have a pretty good weight to it. So I do not know if these are Chinese aftermarkets or if these are gray Bosch aftermarkets. What they do is the gray Bosch ones, they would be assembled over in Europe, and they would not mark them, but they would sell them. That usually happens in the Eastern European countries when this would be assembled. But these pumps were probably put in, I would say, between 2012 to 2014, in that range, and they probably have less than 30,000 miles on them. So just that fact and the kind of leaking internal, let me see if I can do this. You can hear when you blow in there, they're clean now. There's air going through in this direction, which it shouldn't. So I did this only with my mouth here, taking that in there, because I just cleaned it with this stuff, so they're sparking clean. And another thing I wanted to throw in here, because I've been talking about citric acid. Mercedes-Benz sells the citric acid powder, This is this stuff here, which I always have on hand. And the advantage of citric acid powder is this, that it is first of all, you have to be very careful with it. It is an acid. So that's why they have the warning labels on here, and it is primarily with your eyes that you protect your eye and clothing from this, and it should not, should not touch it with your skin. It depends on in which concentration you mix it. This is one which was manufactured in week 11 of 2013. And Mercedes-Benz actually had it made in China. I guess they make now all the chemicals, since we don't want anything anymore happening, any chemical manufacturing anywhere anymore. And it is in group number 20 in your manuals. No matter what car you have in your manual a group 20, and somewhere in group 20, that's probably the water pump cooling system. It will tell you on how this needs to be mixed for your car. They come in 0.5 kilogram bottles. They're about $25, I think it is. And this is the part number. I actually got this off eBay, I think. I think it was eBay. I would think so, yeah. And this is the part number for this stuff. And this is what Bosch uses, what primarily all German automotive manufacturers use, is citric acid, because it has the advantage that it will dissolve any organic substances like the ethanol resin or any type of fuel, oil, grease, all of the stuff will be dissolved, plus mineral deposits from water. And it does not attack or tarnish stainless steel, aluminum, or cast metals, cast iron. So you could run this stuff here in a concentration of about 10% or 15% through this. And the best way this works is when it is hot. So you want to have a heater in the supply solution with this here, in order to run this at about 85 degrees Celsius to 90 degrees. That's when it has its highest potency. And that's when you also have to be careful that you don't get this into your eyes and on your hands or clothing, because it can, if it is mixed in a higher concentration, eat holes into any organic substances, which would be, for instance, cotton. If you wear a cotton clothing or cotton shirts, you will wind up with a hole from this stuff, and you will get a burn mark on your skin. So you have to be very, very careful with this. But this is the ideal solution for this. So if you wanted to clean the fuel pumps completely out to restore them, it would be to set up a bucket, with this stuff, make like 5 liters up or a gallon, and use 1 bucket on a gallon. That's usually what I do, is so I get 14% out of it. And then put one of these heat elements in there for cooking, and let that cook, and preferably with a thermostat control set to 85, 90 degrees Celsius, and then suck it out of that supply and pump it back in, and then see if you can pump it reverse too. That will loosen everything up. And you may want to run that through a filter too. Like I said, we were lucky here that the check valves actually do not work right anymore, because I was able to blow it backwards. And that should not happen on these pumps. So you have a double check valve situation on these pumps. First check valve, then an internal check valve. And when they get old and dry out, that's when they're starting to leak like this. So I would say these pumps are good 10 years old. If they're Chinese made, if they were really Chinese copies, clones basically, then they are probably going to be less than 10 years of age. So if they put them in 2014, which I suspect, and this is took them out last year, working okay, because I got actually the full 6.4 PS bar out. I need it. But like I said, they're probably going more out than they're usable. I kept them, and now I cleaned them finally after over a year and a half. So I have a emergency set here if I needed to throw in a pump somewhere. I have a pump, or if I needed another, something for another project. They're still running good. So, and I'm going to keep them around. I wouldn't put them in a car and expect to get 50,000 miles out of them. They're just too far out. So 2014 they were put in, they came out last year, which would get us probably at a 6 to 7 year mark. And they didn't drive very much with the car, so you're going to have some residue in it. And it is the fuel pump mostly affected by this is the one which has the first stage pump, not the second stage pump, because of all the filtration. But this was interesting to see. And with that, you have a great afternoon.